Welcome to No Room for Phonies, episode 70.
Wow, we are at an even number.
And we are outside tonight, so you will hear squirrels, dogs,
airplanes,
people having little parties and laughing. So there's going to be stuff in the background, but just try to tune it out. Sorry, I just joked.
You want to start?
No, I'm fine. So episode 70, the 10 wisest people that we identified or know.
I don't think we know them.
We don't know them, but we identified 10 wise people.
Well, each of us
some alive,
chose 10.
Some no longer alive, that kind of thing. But my green light moment has been the Enneagrams.
Yeah. So we are reading 2 books about the Enneagram. This is our first exploration of the topic.
Yeah, and it's really about the beauty of understanding yourself, and it's really a journey kind of into humility and freedom. So there's lots, I'm sure, of books out there. I read the one by Richard Rohr, and I'm also reading his book Falling Upward. So
and I'm reading the version by Riso and Hudson. But, some of the pioneers of the Enneagram. I really would,
it's really a life-changing, definitely a green light moment.
Yeah.
So we'll just encourage you to explore that. And my book recommendation is going back. It's The Invisible Kingdom, Reimagining Chronic Illness by Megan O'Rourke. And I would suggest that if you're ever going through anything where you're kind of being diagnosed with something or going through something where you're being treated or dealing with doctors and hospitals and those kinds of things, that you should really read this book. Absolutely. It has a lot of insight into how doctors function and work and what their kind of I don't know how to say it, like what their...
Not their philosophy.
Well, no, it's kind of what their pitfalls are in dealing with people and how they often
Basically, it takes doctors off of the pedestals that some people like to put them up on.
Yeah.
And sometimes they
and just like we have brilliant teachers and brilliant writers and brilliant people who work even in supermarkets who just are really good at that. We have really good doctors and we have really, really, really bad ones. And this just gives you some strategies, I think, for working your way through it. And the podcast recommendation is yours.
It is?
Yeah, The Happiness Lab with
The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. So The Happiness Lab is the name of the podcast, and there are several episodes. I haven't listened to them all yet, but definitely gives you not just superficial advice on being happy, but actually doing research on the brain and on emotional intelligence and on measuring happiness, which is actually quite elusive and too temporary. So it's deeper than that.
Yeah, I always say that I'm not a big fan of the word happiness. I rather like the word profound joy or sober joy.
Nothing like giggly or...
No, not a big fan.
Ecstatic?
Not a big fan. So anyway, that is our podcast book and green light moment for this round of No Room for Phonies. So the 10 wisest people. It's going
to end up being 20 unless we overlap on anybody.
Well, that's fine. 10 for you and 10 for me. But I'm just saying that what made you, like, what is wisdom to you that made you choose these people?
Wisdom is having insight into humanity, into human stupidity and intelligence, having advice or insight into just improving our earth, our communities,
and for
our relationships.
Me, I like the idea that wisdom is that ability to combine your knowledge and your skills and your passion for good.
Nice.
So to move things forward. That's what I see as wisdom.
Yep.
So my first one, do you want me to go first?
Yep.
My first one is Gandhi.
Oh, okay.
Widely recognized as one of the 20th century's greatest political and spiritual leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And his philosophy was resistance to tyranny through mass, nonviolent civil disobedience.
Yep.
And so
Gandhi, the movie Gandhi, was like the third one my dad ever took me to see when I was young.
Yeah,
it was 3 hours long. It was very good.
Yeah, I just think that idea that you can, stand up for change and do things without violence, I think
it's so sobering, though, that he was assassinated.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But as in the book that I've just read by Richard Rohr, without the support of leadership and the protection of leadership, people who come forward with radical and brilliant ideas are often torn apart.
Yeah.
So anyway, so my first one was Gandhi. What's your first one? Did you have Gandhi?
No, I had thought about him.
Okay.
So in no particular order, Winston Churchill.
Didn't have him.
No.
Why did you pick him?
Just because he led England through, World War II and afterwards, but he just had a way of tackling problems, and I think at time, I don't know enough if he consulted the right people or consulted people. In some of the movies we've seen, he's portrayed a little oddly, but I think sometimes wise people don't fit the norm and have a hard time just being normal in society. And he's quoted a lot, his writings and his essays and his thoughts. So I just was thinking through history and trying to pick somebody that I would like to learn a little bit more about.
Okay, so my second one was Martin Luther King, the civil rights legend.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have him?
Nope.
In the 1950s, he led the movement to end segregation and counter prejudice in the United States. And again, he's this person of peaceful protests. His speeches were some of the most iconic of the 20th century, and they actually had a profound effect on national consciousness. And I don't think we've ever had a leader since then who's had that kind of profound effect on national consciousness. I mean, I think Obama had some good speeches and things, but nothing. I think he would have more. Not where the
huge population was swayed. Although, I mean, there were a lot of people that didn't like Martin Luther.
Yes.
King. And
anyway, I just thought that, he was this person that felt that change was just about persistence, right? Mm-hmm. The gentle rain that soaketh. You keep giving your message even though you might be being rejected, but you just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So he was my second one.
Okay. I don't have anybody else who's historical. Well, one person kind of.
Oh, that's fine. Just do your second one.
So I chose Richard Rohr.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because we're reading 2 or 3 of his books right now. And I just think for a modern thinker, he really stretches what
and we should say that he's a Catholic priest. Yeah.
But you wouldn't know it from his thoughts and his writings. He is so open to a wideness in God's mercy, to quote another book title.
But also,
he just considers all humanity to have worth rather than just the religious ones.
Well, and I also feel that he also kind of puts his finger on modern religion and their rules and their this and their that.
He exposes a lot
and he
of that.
exposes a lot of that. And, you know, I think he's very intelligent.
And
Absolutely.
I haven't read yet much of his stuff about men's growth and men's maturation and being becoming a wise and mature man in the modern, in the 21st century. But I think that I really want to read some of his stuff about that too.
And I think the thing I like about him is when he writes his books, he talks about his own struggles and what his issues have been and how he's tried to overcome things himself. So he's really humble, but not like humble in that, oh, look at him. He's authentic. No. He's very authentic. So my third one was Nelson Mandela.
I had thought about putting him.
He's considered the father of modern South Africa, and he was instrumental in tearing down the oppressive government. He received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 for destroying apartheid and laying the foundation for democracy there. So, I mean, just some of his writings, even in jail, are, like, I guess part of what makes me think that someone is wise is if when I read their writings and things that I'm inspired by it. And I'm always inspired by him. I think that he suffered greatly for his cause, but he never gave up. I mean, I'm sure he had dark days. I'm not saying that, but
yeah, well, I imagine.
But anyway, so my third one was Nelson Mandela.
Okay. The other thing, as I was thinking about these names and choosing these people, is they are just humans and they're fallible and they made mistakes or make if they're still alive. And they're imperfect. So it's not always that they're smart. They might even be stupid and make a stupid mistake, but the wisdom is
wisdom does not mean that you don't make mistakes. It's that you continue on despite your mistakes and you continue learning, continue developing your skills and always have your passion for whatever it is that you believe in.
Is it my turn next?
It's your turn.
Okay, so author Peter Senge.
Don't know him.
Seng.
What did he write?
He wrote, let me just quickly call it up here.
He wrote
books.
The
fifth, lots of books, but his main one that he's very famous for is The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization. So he's written The Fifth Discipline about business, about education, different things like that. But he focuses on group problem solving using systems thinking method. So he has 5 disciplines and he has 11 rules that when you're in a group, you follow these rules as you're working through group problem solving. And
that's cool.
Very, very interesting. He's still alive, still teaching, I think. He's at MIT in the States.
Wow. All right, my next one is Maya Angelou, considered to be one of the most consequential figures of the 20th century and a diverse career spanning 5 decades as a singer, a dancer, a journalist, a civil rights activist, and later as a memoirist, poet, and screenwriter.
What is a memoirist?
I have no idea. Memoirist.
Oh, memoirist.
Sorry, memoirist. I can read. No. Yeah. Anyway, I have loved Maya Angelou for a long time. She was obviously a feminist, but a different kind of feminist to me. She just always had concern. She just this deep thinking, and her poetry is incredibly amazing. Yes. She reminds me the new young woman that did at the inauguration reminds me of present day Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
So that was my next one. Who's your next one?
My next one is a psychologist called Angela Duckworth, and she defined and has been researching the word grit.
Oh, that's cool.
The perseverance and passion for long-term goals. So she has had several interesting shifts in careers, from being a teacher to being a psychologist and other things. But she researches grit and publishes a lot of articles and stuff like that about that, writes about that. And she has a TED Talk as well that's very interesting, all about grit, introducing grit to kind of the audience, whatever.
Wow, cool. That's a cool one.
So
I've never heard of her.
Grit is, it's that perseverance, like with Martin Luther King.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, she's talking about it in a more generic sense than in social activism, but definitely think that she's
for
an
us,
interesting
sometimes
writer.
grit is just different things at different times in your life, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's just standing up for yourself. Sometimes it's like there's a whole bunch of things I think that it is. So my next one is Marie Curie, the first person to win 2 Nobel Peace Prizes.
Isn't she the one who discovered radiation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After becoming the first woman to be granted a Nobel Peace Prize, Curie later became the first person to earn a second one. In 1911, she received her second of the prestigious award in chemistry, this time for her isolation of radium.
Right.
Radium and polonium, and her huge contribution to fighting cancer. Like when you think of all the years that we've been working on that.
I know.
It's just kind of, but anyway, I just thought that she was a strong, and she had to have had like crazy things to overcome as a woman to win 2 Nobel Prizes. No, right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
She must have, because I think men probably tried to take credit for what she was doing.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't be surprised.
All right.
It'd be nice to find a novel about that.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. Okay, the next person I've chosen is Mark Brackett.
Okay, why do I know his name?
Because
did he
we've
write
just
The
read
Change?
No, we've just read the book Permission to Feel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he is pretty.
And he is the founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and professor in Child Studies Center at Yale. So he has come up with the RULER, the ruler,
right,
acronym to think and work through emotional intelligence challenges.
And I'm telling you, I think that if educational, like boards of education or whatever, would adopt his methods of integrating emotional intelligence into...
I think it would be such a big jump of all the efforts at character education that they've tried that have fallen short.
Because character education that is like, okay, for 40 minutes every week, we're going to sit down and have character education. This is integrated into everything.
Yeah. Every minute.
Like I just remember one of the examples in the book was this little girl, and she said, we didn't want to include this other person in our game, but our philosophy or our contract or whatever says that we have to. So we did, and then we found out how much we had in common with each other. So his way of doing it is just pervasive to the whole
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My next one is Seth Golden. You didn't have Seth Golden?
I have him.
Oh, do you? So we agree on that?
We agree on that one.
So he writes one of the most popular blogs in the world and is founder of both Yoyodyne and Squidoo. In 2013, he was one of just 3 professionals inducted into the Direct Marketing Hall of Fame. And in May 2018, he was inducted into the Marketing Hall of Fame as well.
Yes, and so he does write a lot about marketing and business. However,
he writes a lot.
He writes a lot about life in general, and he is just wrapping up or launching a new project on climate change where through people who listen to his podcast and read his blog, he has found, 92 individuals starting out, or even more volunteers, and maybe it's lots of volunteers in 92 countries that have published a calendar or a book on climate change and positive things that we can do as individuals and how we can push our governments to make a difference. And
But he's very practical,
But he's
right?
very
He talks
practical.
about education. He talks about
Status.
He talks about all kinds of things.
He just thinks about all sorts of random, very small level type thoughts and then builds on them.
And if you listen to his podcast, they're very, very short.
Yeah.
And he gets right to the point, unlike
and
us.
And his blog too.
Yeah, his blog
It's very
too.
short.
All right, so we both agreed on Seth Golden.
We did.
My next one is Michelle Obama.
Good choice.
As the First Lady, she was a role model for women and worked as an advocate for poverty awareness, education, nutrition, physical activity, and healthy eating. And she supported American designers and was considered a fashion icon. And she is still highly influential, like her book and everything.
Yep.
And I remember when I read her book, and then I was with a friend of mine, and she said, wow, it's easy for her. She was like, when you have lots of money, you can do. And I went, did you read the book? Because she was poor. Like, she started out like super poor in like Chicago. And her father had MS. Like, she had a rough, and the same with Obama himself. Like, there was no, like, here, silver spoon in your mouth, like, he who shall not be named in Canada as prime minister.
Yeah.
Like, there's no silver spoon. These people, and I mean, I just found Michelle Obama very authentic. So.
Absolutely.
And she didn't want him to run for president, and she was quite clear about that. I felt.
That was in her biography.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another woman that I find wise is Carol Dweck, another researcher, psychologist, and she coined the term.
What did she coin? What terms? It's an education term, right?
Yes. Mindset.
Mindset, yeah.
Closed mindset and open mindset.
Yeah. Yes. She's quite brilliant.
Yeah. So lots of very interesting writing about mindset, and not just in learning, but in life, like approaching, allowing mistakes to happen and growing from your mistakes and things like that. So I really think that she's contributed a lot to emotional intelligence writing and
it's like people.
As well.
Her writing is quite old, right? Like, it's come from the
80s,
90s, 2000s. But still, we're in 2020.
But it didn't gain traction like 2010 until 2010. Some of her stuff.
Yeah. So my next one is Queen Victoria.
Really?
Yep.
She's wise or just famous?
Yeah. No. Did you know that Queen Victoria was a linguist? She spoke fluent English and German and studied other languages, including French, Italian, and Latin.
Didn't know that.
She learned Indian and Hindustani. And she had like a really, really strong marriage. She had 9 children. She ruled, like, after he died, she remained in mourning like the rest of her life.
Right.
She ruled for over 60 years. So not as long as Queen Elizabeth now, but and so much, there are so many places named after her and whatever. Like, she was a very influential woman. And all the movies and everything depict her as quite, like, she's whatever, but she must have had.
Yeah, she must have been very wise.
But I mean, she studied, she raised all these kids. Like, I don't want to think always as wisdom as just like, oh, I've published all these books and I'm telling you all these wise things. I just lived a life of passion and knowledge and skill, and I raised my kids and I did good things, and because a lot of women don't get some of the opportunities that men get.
We have an account of her because she's famous, and a lot of women's stories never have been told, even though they have been amazing.
And I searched, of course, for women because a lot for women because
absolutely.
I think they're lost sometimes in history, and every movie on about Queen Victoria, I have just found so fascinating.
Yeah.
her way of dealing with things.
The one where there was the man from India that was teaching her and stuff. That was where she was portrayed the most as like sleepy and bored, whatever, right?
Yeah, but she was old then.
She was old. Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that she's...
Well, I was trying to find 5 and 5.
Well, I only
found 4 women that I...
But I just find the idea that Queen Victoria, like, her reign was just fascinating, and the fact that she just juggled all these things, like a marriage of 9 children. And I know she had help. I'm not saying that, but
no, I know.
She loved her children. Like, that was fairly...
Yep.
And she loved her husband. Like, they were like, you know... Plus, she did rule a nation. Yep. So, anyway, I just thought she was an example of wisdom.
So, to continue along women, you might laugh. I don't know. I put Brené Brown because of her teachings and just because I've been learning so much from reading her stuff for the last 2 years.
And I mean, I guess I would put like...
And it started with her TED Talk on shame. And then, I mean, I know that she's now famous and American celebrity and all that, whatever, which we don't get swept away by, but I still think that she has contributed a lot to, and I don't know why, for me, as I was thinking about wisdom, I was thinking a lot about emotional intelligence. I guess that's just the space I'm in right now.
Yeah.
So, I thought...
And then
it's still my turn, I think.
No.
No? Okay, go ahead.
Do you have 2 left or 3?
I have 1, 2, because we shared Seth Golden.
Right. Okay. I have, my next one is Russian author Leo Tolstoy. Mm-hmm. A master of realistic fiction and one of the world's greatest novelists. Anna Karenina, how do you say that?
What? Karenina.
And he wrote War and Peace.
Have you read that ever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oscillating between skepticism and dogmatism, he explored the most diverse approaches to the human experience. The most essential lesson to take from Tolstoy is to follow his lead and recognize that the best way to challenge our assumptions and prejudice and develop new ways of looking at the world is to surround ourselves with people whose views and lifestyles are different from our own. That was his major thing. And his lessons are to keep an open mind, practice empathy, make a difference, master the art of simple living, beware your contradictions, and expand your social circle. And his contradiction was that he was very wealthy, and so he tried to understand what it was like to, he would do things to
understand what poverty was like.
Yes, and to be so that people were aware that he understood his own contradiction of saying to live a simple life when he had all this money and whatever. Okay. So he understood his own contradiction, which is an interesting thing. But anyway, he was my number 9.
Okay, my number 9 is Noam Chomsky. He is a linguist by trade, and does education. He's also involved in political movements and philosophy. But as a linguist, he came up with some theories around learning, which changed the whole way that language has been taught. It used to be thought that you were kind of taught like a parrot. You would give, children would hear words and then they would repeat the words, and then they would hear new words and they'd repeat those words. But Chomsky explored the fact that a child born today, when he or she learns to speak whichever language they learn to speak in their first language, by the time they're 3 or 4 years old, will be uttering sentences that nobody has ever said before in the world.
That's interesting.
So he talked about universal grammar, that we're all born with this innate grammar that doesn't matter what language you speak. And then when you learn a language, you learn how to superimpose the grammar rules over top of this universal
Like you were
grammar.
laughing at Mason today, right? Because we think it's so cute
that because at the end...
He seems to make it into every podcast. lately, but it's like, because when we went to see him soccer, and then I said I really liked watching you play soccer. It was really fun. No, I really liked watching you play soccer today. And he said, did you? And then what did you say?
So I said, and
your coach.
Your coach is a really good coach. And he said, do you think so?
But then he said, you said your coach was really proud of you. And he said, was he? And
so he used it. I mean, we have to teach these tag questions in ESL classes, and he just knows them perfectly.
It's so
and
funny.
He's 3 years old.
Yeah, he's 3. It was very
He changes
cute.
the grammar and the verb agreement and everything perfectly. He knows the grammar. So it's just fun.
Anyway, so my number 10 is Rosa Parks.
Nice.
The mother of the civil rights movement. She refused to give up her seat on the bus to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. She was arrested, and then she launched the Montgomery bus boycott by 17,000 black citizens.
No.
So, wisdom enough to know when to push.
Yep.
And say, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
I think there's some wisdom in that.
And she didn't know.
Especially when you're under complete, terrifying pressure.
Yeah.
And you stand up for yourself. It's pretty hard.
I can't imagine what she was done. Yeah.
I mean, I've stood up for myself at times, and it's hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you're when your life is not threatened, kind of, sort of. But to stand up for yourself when you don't know whether this guy's going to go after you or what's going to be the thing, I can't imagine. But the wisdom to know, no, this is my moment. This is when I have to do this. So you just straighten the camera now?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, who's your last one?
So my last one is Elizabeth Zimmerman.
I don't know who she is. Do you know who she is?
Of course I know who she is. So she is the modern pioneer of the knitting world.
Oh, of course she is.
So she wrote in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. She had a little newsletter and then eventually wrote books on knitting and the common sense around it. And she took it from being a domestic thing for just the lowly people to do into it being like a worthwhile textile art and craft to follow. So she had her foibles, and some of her some of her ideas were a little bit misplaced, I think. But anyway, she's very important, and because of her, I learned how to design. So I managed to get my hands on one of her books when I was a teenager.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we agreed on one. I mean, not agreed, but we overlapped on one.
Well, there was a couple I had thought of saying, and I don't know.
I kind of wanted to go, I know some people, I think, that are currently in my life that show wisdom, and I think I've eliminated... Well, and
in our past, who've passed on, that showed some wisdom.
And I also think that there's a lot of things, now that I'm in my late 50s, I've kind of eliminated some people out of my life who can't seem to show any wisdom.
Yeah.
So, right? And a lot of it is the inability to show emotional intelligence or take responsibility for your behavior, or, just be, or be interesting in some way. So they're gone out of my life. So anyway, there are lots of other wise people that are around us, but those are the ones we chose to talk about today. And hopefully you find it interesting. And
if you do comment on our Facebook posts or Instagram or Twitter, you still post on Twitter, yes?
I put everything everywhere. Including Pinterest. You can believe it.
Wow. So anyway, wherever you watch or listen, please put some comments about some wise people some people you consider wise.
Yes. And our next podcast will be August 30th, and that's going to be the Revisiting School Success one. And I'm just going to pull the fine points from our series on education that we did last year at some point. I think it was last year at this time.
Yeah, well, it was June and July and part of August.
Yeah, we did
10 episodes on education.
So it must have been May, June, July, August.
July, August.
That's only 6.
And September.
in October.
No.
But anyway,
May, June,
whatever. Anyway, I'm going to go back through those episodes and just pull out some things. I guess
episode
here's
43
my
was
here's
the first
my
one. I'm pretty
first
sure episode
bit
43.
of school success wisdom for people in Ontario and particularly people in Niagara. You can know the name of your child's teacher before the first day of school. And in fact, it's a great thing to take your child to school and have a little visit and get their head around where they're going to be, what they're going to be after a long summer. The schools are open.
So the Monday before Labor Day weekend in Ontario, all schools are open, and there will be a principal. There should be
and
a principal
secretary,
and a secretary in the building.
And a lot of teachers, one would hope, would be in getting things ready. But there are teachers who do that. But anyway.
Sorry to any teachers who listen who are in schools those weeks.
Or they go in ahead of time so they can have that week still off. I think there might be some PA days that week, but I'm not even sure. But anyway, you can know who your child's teacher is before the first day of school, and you can go in and peek into that classroom so that your kid, particularly if they're a little bit worried about school or have been talking about, Mom, what is it going to be like, blah, 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 then please don't let yourself be told no.
The other thing is, if you've been given a list from Staples or any other store saying that this is what you should be buying your children for school, it is completely a marketing gimmick. In Ontario, you do not have to provide any school supplies for your children.
A lunch bag, and a backpack.
And an extra pair of
shoes are really...
And an extra change of clothes for kindergarten.
And for me, if I had kids that didn't have backpacks because they couldn't afford them, I had a source that provided backpacks. And I also had the local Walmart that would provide shoes for kids who didn't have them. So there's ways around that, and no one should feel under pressure in Ontario to be buying certain kinds of things in order for their kid to
just
go back
the grade
to school.
10 calculator in high school.
So those are our little tips for nearing the end of summer, and we'll be back on August 30th for episode 71, Revisiting School Success.
This has been episode 70.
Wisdom.
Wise people.